Hello, it's day 18, and I want to talk about the food pyramid. Oh man, the food pyramid. As a child of the 90s, this is how I learned about nutrition. We would color in the different foods on the food pyramid, we'd cut out the pieces and paste them on a piece of paper, we were quizzed over it. If you wanted to know what a healthy diet looked like in the 90s, this is what everyone aspired to. And funnily enough, the 90s are also the time, I think, when most Americans became overweight. I know when I look back at pictures of my family, nobody was really overweight in the 70s or 80s. But the 90s? The 90s are when everybody suddenly put on 20 to 30 pounds. I personally think a lot of that had to do with the food pyramid. I think other people would say that it also had to do with sedentary jobs becoming more common, the internet becoming a really big thing at that time period. People just sat around more. And most of our entertainment, at least in my area of the world, over here in the Midwest, most of our entertainment involved sitting and eating. But interestingly, as much as this was drilled in our head, these days I think everybody who's interested in nutrition, or anybody who knows even the barest bit about designing a diet, even if you're not a dietitian, I think everybody can look at this and see the flaws. For example, breads and grains. This was supposed to be, the reason it was at the bottom of the pyramid was it was the foundation upon which your whole diet should be built on. You should be eating bread and you should be eating whole grain. Now, when I was taught the food pyramid, they didn't really stress the fact that it had to be whole grain. When I was a kid, me and like all of my classmates, we understood this to mean any kind of bread or grain. That meant corn, that meant Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, Cheerios, it meant Pop-Tarts. We were not taught about whole grain. I didn't even hear the word brown rice until I was in middle school, for example. So right off the bat, this right here, the fact that they wanted us to eat 6 to 11 servings of grain, this was flawed for me and my classmates. Then moving up the pyramid, this is the part that I feel like most people, I feel like for a lot of people these days, if you just cut off this bottom part of the pyramid and started it here, this is what most people's so-called healthy diets look like these days. So you have your vegetables, you're supposed to eat 3 to 5, and then your fruits, 2 to 4. I think that sounds reasonable to most people these days. Nowadays I feel like these two groups get lumped together, and they say you should be eating, they just make it a flat number. You eat 5 a day. You've heard that phrase, right? That slogan, 5 a day for health, fruits and vegetables. Then moving even further up, you have your milk and your meat. Again, this is me being conspiracy theory Kara over here, but milk, I think the dairy industry had a lot to do with this right here, because I cannot imagine eating this many servings of milk and cheese. The 90s were also the got milk era, where children were fed cartons of milk with every meal, because if we didn't, then we would be horribly calcium deficient and we would just fall over and die right there. So again, this one I don't agree with. And then meat, 2 to 3. As an American, I feel like we eat a lot of meat with every meal, and this one, especially with people who are trying to be environmentally conscious these days, this one's going to be a little bit foreign to look at, because you should eating meat with 2 out of your 3 meals, or eating at least 3 servings of meat a day. That's a ton of meat. But again, looking back at the 90s, what did we eat in the mornings? We had eggs, bacon, sausage. What did we eat for lunches? Our school lunches were hamburger patties or sausage and shells, or sometimes if they really wanted to treat us, we'd have those weird little boat pizzas. They looked like little boats, and there was just cheese in them and like sausages. And then for dinner, like my mom was never much of a cook. She doesn't like to cook, so a lot of times it'd be something packaged and processed. And in America, what kind of packaged and processed meals are you going to get? You're going to get canned chili. You're going to get sloppy Joe mix with the beef in it. You're going to get those pork hot dogs. So this right here, this is probably the only part of the food pyramid I held to in the 90s. This was the easiest section of the food pyramid, I would say. And then at the very tippy top of the food pyramid in the 90s were fats and oils. The 90s were prime time to cut fat out of your diet. You were not supposed to eat fat in the 90s at all. Women would be ridiculed if they cooked with oil. And that's not even a joke. And God help you if you ate butter instead of margarine. Those commercials with Fabio and the can't believe it's not butter. But when I think about the food pyramid, I can't help but also think back to my grandparents and how they were eating in the 90s. Let's just say they weren't following the food pyramid. My grandma, who grew 90% of everything she ever ate, she ate vegetables from her garden, she ate eggs from her chickens, and every now and then, maybe like every week or so, she would trade with another farmer for some kind of meat. So she ate these three sections right here, and then in the fall, when her apple trees started producing, she would add in the fruit. So that woman was the only skinny person in our family. True facts. And then I think about my other grandmother. How did she eat during the 90s when she was alive? Well, first of all, she wasn't following the food pyramid either. That lady cooked with more fat than anyone I know. Butter was easy to get because she produced it herself. Butter was easy to get, so everything she cooked was in butter. So fat, she cooked with tons of fat. Again, dairy, producing dairy herself from both cows and goats. So this was a big portion of it. And again, vegetables from a garden. So she ate from these three sections. And I wouldn't call her skinny per se, but she was definitely an average woman. And she lived to be 98 years old. And then I look at the people in my life who in the 90s were following slim fast diets, or eating Special K for breakfast every morning, skipping lunch, and then having meat for dinner. Like the people who were eating from these two groups, bread and grains and meat, the people in my life that I know who were doing that, those people are overweight now. I don't want to say that the food pyramid made us fat, but I do wonder, how did they mess this up so bad? If I look at my own diet now, how do I eat? Well, let's see. First of all, I forgot lunch today. I packed it, but I forgot to bring it. So at least I'm one step above where I was. At least I packed it. But let's see, an average day for me, what do I eat? Well, I wake up, and for breakfast, I will have milk in my coffee. I will sometimes eat noodles, which is not good for me, or sometimes I will eat chicken strips. Then for lunch, let's see, what did I pack for lunch today? I had carrots and hummus, so that's vegetables. Let's see. And then for dinner, we usually do a meat and a vegetable, sometimes a grain. So if I had to say where I'm eating from, I think I'm eating from here, 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 and definitely here. I eat way too many sweets. So I feel like I want to make a food trapezoid. Again, I don't want to cut out any, I don't want to forbid any food on the Franken diet. But I feel like if I created a food trapezoid, if I just ate from those sections, I'd be pretty well set. And then sometimes I think about those keto people who only eat from that tiny little food triangle at the top. And I think about the paleo people who eat a slightly larger triangle, but cut certain things out of here. To sum it up, I think the food pyramid is trash. It's trash and we should throw it out. It is so unrealistic to put numbers on what somebody should be eating. If there's one thing, okay, I haven't really touched that intuitive eating workbook since I showed it to you guys yesterday, but if there's one thing from intuitive eating that I do agree with, it's that you should probably eat what you're craving. There are some days when all I want to eat is eggs. There's some days when all I want is, fruit. So yeah, that's the food pyramid. That's the food pyramid from the 1990s in all of its garbage glory. And if you want to know the reason why I don't trust packaged diets, or why I don't really trust the big health campaigns that are popular in this day and age, it's because the food pyramid burned me. We were taught this as gospel, and it was terrible advice. It makes me wonder, in 20 or 30 years, what are we going to look back on from today? What am I going to be sketching on the whiteboard in 20 or 30 years making fun of?